welcome back to the Talk Past podcast. Of course, here again, finally. I am here with my co-host.
Gear me up and sit me on a horse. It is Red Iron Riot, aka the War Queen.
And I, of course, am NC. You can find me on Instagram as, I believe, NC Theory or NC Verse. But I also run the channel Instagram.
And you can find me on Instagram as the War Queen, _war_queen. Although there's not a lot relating to the podcast on there at the moment. It's my personal one with art and shenanigans.
Same here. I try to have considering what we do, there's a bit of overlap, but I do try to be a little bit more photographic. So my personal one.
Yeah. Oh man, you got some good stuff on yours. But we are just an amalgamation of nerdy interests.
Yeah, and speaking of photography and cinematography, our topic today or tonight, whenever you're listening to this, is I keep having Last Kingdom in my head, but it is A Knight's Tale, featuring a wide array of talent that's quite prominent right now. Obviously starring, however, our personal favorite, the Joker.
Mm-hmm. Oh man, I gotta admit, right off the bat, there were definitely a bunch of spots in this movie that were just here to show off a sweaty Heath Ledger, and
that seems to be a Hollywood tradition. Is to shove bodies in your face and hope that's what sells it.
And young Alan Tudyk, and he has some of the best faces in this movie. Just chef's kiss, just great.
And of course, of current relevance, Paul Bettany.
Yep. Did you see that meme as well, where it's like, oh, people nowadays getting introduced to Paul Bettany as the Vision, and me meeting him for the first time as a naked drunk walking down a dirt road and A Knight's Tale.
Right. Quick harken back to The Last Kingdom. Father Bayaka, in a similar vein of what we're talking about right now, Father Bayaka is Professor Quirrell in Harry Potter. So it's so weird seeing these actors today in the roles that they're doing now. Like, of course, we see them mostly in Marvel at the moment. Unfortunately, we don't have Heath Ledger. But take a look at him between A Knight's Tale and obviously either Parnassus and The Dark Knight. And there's such growth and they look so different sometimes. You wouldn't recognize them.
True. So I guess we can preface, go ahead and preface with what the actual storyline, quote unquote, from IMDb is.
Yes.
And apparently, A Knight's Tale was inspired. It's written and directed by Brian Helgeland. I think I pronounced that right, but sue me. Don't sue me. Inspired by the Canterbury Tales, as well as the early life of William Marshall, later the first Earl of Pembroke. This is the story of William, a young squire with a gift for jousting. After his master dies suddenly, the squire hits the road with his cohorts, Roland and Watt, played by Mark Addy and, of course, Alan Tudyk, as just mentioned. On the journey, they stumble across William Chaucer. They stumble across Chaucer. William, lacking the proper pedigree, convinces Chaucer to forge his genealogy documents that will pass him off as a knight. And with this in hand, he sets out to prove himself a worthy knight in the European jousting competitions. And the tagline, from peasant to knight, one man can change his stars.
Yeah, so this is based in the 1300s, which is the 14th century.
14th century. And we actually, during the movie, we do actually get a point of this is where this is technically supposed to be, which is 1356, because they mentioned the Battle of Poitiers.
Indeed. Which I actually forgot. But in terms of because we'll in this podcast episode delve into any aspect we can think of, specifically, of course, clothing. But I just want to say there's so much of clothing going on in here. There's so many different types of armor going on in here. There's just so much going on in this movie. And the important thing right off the bat, this is not any way historical. It is hugely anachronistic all over the place. But I feel like this kind of because this is kind of a comedy spoof of
satirical romance, quote unquote.
Yeah, so it's kind of tongue-in-cheek medieval. It's not necessarily taking itself seriously or the time frame. But then again, with Hollywood, I mean, when do they ever take anything historical?
Well, sometimes they want to take things historical, and then, it's one of those things we see a lot. You go historical, you go full historical. You go anachronistic, you push that anachronism. You have fun with that anachronism. You say, this is how we are taking ourselves, and we're not going to stop it. So eat my butt, sort of.
I consider that sort of like low fantasy is in my head. Let's think of The Last Kingdom as low fantasy because there's magic in The Last Kingdom through obviously the Danes. It's implied, right? But I mean, there's cinema crap that is obviously magic.
Yeah.
But it's obviously deeply anachronistic. So I consider anachronism to be low fantasy. So it's not real. It's kind of a fantastical attire.
Mhm.
So this, I think, is a little closer to historical than, say, The Last Kingdom, or and especially Vikings, or the Green Knight, which just came out.
I'm not going to be seeing that yet. I have promised to see it with my sister when I move. So
I haven't seen it, so no spoilers from me.
I'm hearing good things about it. I'm still torn personally, but here's to hoping. Fingers crossed.
A mix. I'll make up my own mind when I see it. When I watch it, I know it's complete and utter fantasy, and not to take it historical.
Yeah, I don't know. That's fair.
Like,
but yeah, but for this, we're given a time frame. We're given a good number of locations to use to kind of be like, oh well, we get a lot of names that like sound like, okay, this is an actual person that we might want to like kind of side eye sort of thing, especially of course Prince Edward features in the story for this a lot.
Yeah, which one was him? Was he Edward? Because we've got numbered Edwards. Is this Edward the First?
This is the Black Prince.
We pull him up quick because obviously we know about Edward II.
AKA Edward of Woodstock, Prince of Wales, and Aquitaine. And Aquitaine and Duke
no
of
relation
Cornwall.
to Woodstock, the concert. He was not present. Nothing to do with Red Hot Chili Peppers.
But yeah, he shows up twice in the course of the movie, like well, 3 times technically, I guess. But he as important plot points at the end of it, which kind of silly, but yeah, what you gonna do? Royalty.
Yeah, this is his real later period because he died in 1376.
But
so he's old.
Yeah, but the thing too is also he didn't actually get the nomenclature, the Black Prince, until after his death, like years after his death.
Happens. Yeah.
So they using his moniker, the Black Prince, is kind of just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. That usually happens with history. Names that are names of grandeur tend to happen latter. Like, obviously, I always bring up Alfred the Great because I'm a Viking Age person. I think back in the medieval period, names or nicknames were very simple, like John the Dumb, or
Ivar the Boneless.
Yep, Ethel Flan the Pancake, or maybe Ethel Flan. It should be Ethel Flan the Silky, because flan is very silky smooth and kind of like pudding. But you stuff like that that's really simple, something that's kind of making fun of a very simple aspect of a person. So I wonder what he would have had in life, maybe by his detractors or the peasants or so.
Oh man, so as I said, I kind of rewatched this just because I wanted to go through it because they used just so many different styles of armor, and I just got to say, off the bat, the first thing, every scene this happens, I cringe. You see it a lot. There's parts where William, Heath Ledger, he's putting down his visor, and there's such a big gap between the top of his helmet and the nose ridge of his visor. It just makes me cringe every time. Every time.
Let me pull up an image because it's coming up with his antagonist.
Like it happens a little bit to his antagonist Count Adamar, but just during these jousting scenes with this, let me see if I can pull it up for you. Almost.
It comes up with all of these images with him either wearing it without the helm or with it drawn up, the visor drawn up.
Okay. I got one for you. So this first helmet, and this is the helmet you see for most, like the first part of the movie, which is it's a visored bassinet, and great helmet for anybody doing a 13th, 12th century sort of thing. But just every time, and I will post this in the production session production so you can see. But just when you look at this, look at the width of that. Look at that. It just makes me cringe every time.
Yeah, that looks like a good place to put a sword or a
lance.
lance.
A good place to put, to let the splinters in.
Is this even historically accurate? Let me pull this up.
This helmet is a visored bassinet, which is definitely, or it's either, it should be a bassinet. It's definitely a historical style of helmet.
Yep, here it is.
And it's a real good basic helmet for a lot of scenarios. Pre-15th century, I would say.
Yeah. However, all the examples pulling up to definitely show a more creased opening at the eyes, rather than here. It looks like you can stuff your mail in there.
You're not wrong. But and for this helmet, we see in the early bits of it, it's always kind of like that with this wide opening. Later in the later half of the movie, where he has a fancier helmet and it's a nicer helmet, a more modern for the era sort of helmet. There's this thing that happens during these scenes where when the helmet's down, the visor looks, that slit for the visor looks really, it actually looks like, how you would imagine how you would want it to be, very narrow, because, you don't want splinters getting in there.
Yeah.
But let me take and I think, so how familiar are you with Robocop? I know it's just going to sound off the wall.
So my only experience with Robocop is he was in the most recent Mortal Kombat game for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah. All right. So if you look at this at the second helmet, you see that the visor is very, very much more narrow. The vision slit is very.
Yeah, but he's got this weird shark fin.
Oh, that's actually a historical thing for later helmets. But so what happens in other scenes is that you'll see the slit on this visor. It just actually seems to get wider. And I bring up Robocop because I'm pretty sure it was a thing they did you could be like, oh, you can see Heath Ledger's face through the helmet a little better like that. And I bring up Robocop because one of the reasons it was, it's Sylvester Stallone, and Robocop was never supposed to. No, not Robocop. Judge Dredd. I'm a dingus. Because Judge Dredd never took off his helmet where people could see, because it's kind of the thing, And well, because it's Sylvester Stallone, well, you got to see his face, right?
Right. You're paying for Sylvester, not for a stunt double.
Yeah. So
in this instance, of course, you're paying for Heath. Not.
But this is also like, this is after the Patriot, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, and apparently in an interview, the director's like, yeah, we got Heath after he wanted Heath after his scene in the Patriot to do this bit. And so it's like, well, so we could see him through this helmet, through parts of it, because it's just every time it's just like, why does this visor slit keep getting wider?
Yeah. So bassinets started popping up. I think the start of the word BASCINET at least here on Wiki, but there's multiple ways like BSS. I keep doing BS. BASSINET, etc. Started popping up in the late 12th century, obviously getting rather popular here in the 1300s, as we're obviously focusing here on the Knight's Tale. But yeah, that's something of maybe a reenactism. Obviously, it's a Hollywoodism, Hollywood medieval, as will soon be relevant on this channel. But it just
well, the bassinet's it's a historical helmet. The visor, these are actually do look, pretty historical.
yeah,
The ridge, as time went on and advancements in armor, you get all the different face plates. You got some different things going on with the actual bassinet itself. It's
I like that. Just to go a little lower, just for a second, from the the one image you sent on the bottom, an obvious memory of the film. I like that he is at least wearing full plate.
So the funny thing is that with this plate, you can kind of see the protection on his thighs.
Yeah.
Those are actually separate from his armor. They're attached to the saddle. You don't see that in his earlier armor iterations. He doesn't actually have that. He only has the what am I thinking here? The tasses that go from the waist that protect the thighs. He only has those for a portion of the movie. And then with this armor and during these jousts, he's got this little leg armor that's attached to the saddle.
Exactly. He, in the first half of the movie, he's the Mandalorian before getting the upgrade to Beskar armor. Then he becomes the Mandalorian.
It's a good analogy, not gonna lie.
The Ledgerlorian, yeah.
Can you hear my facepalm over the mic? Can you?
Yeah. No, just based off these two images you sent me, there's obviously clear differences. Obviously, because they put more money over the course of the film, but it draws that similarity, which of course medieval and Star Wars is definitely something to say about that. But the bassinet, it just feels like a bit of a reenactism that they would make it a little wider or a little longer for you to see the person. Like I know we do some reenactisms that are specific for being able to hear us, see us.
You see, here's I've had a good shot of it. Here's an image where the slit for in the visor is just like so much wider than it looks in these long shots. Because I gotta imagine, you got parts of these are stunt doubles, and then you got Heath Ledger in the armor, then you got the stunt double.
Right now, historically speaking, I mean that would be. I mean, it looks cool, but I mean, if your opponent aims their lance just right, that's going through your skull.
Yeah.
That could break off the helm, and just, if not kill you, it would definitely injure you or just completely damage that helm beyond repair.
Mm-hmm. Like King Henry II of France, who died when splinters entered his eye and brain after being hit in the face.
Exactly. There's a jousting helm that best helps with deflecting or catching lances. Now it's not popping up here on Google Images, so I'm just going to describe it based on memory. But there's a ridge on the helmet, very simple, that is kind of like an eyebrow. That when the lance catches it, obviously it's going to get stuck, or if it's above it, it'll glance off. It's the dome-like helm, so it doesn't have a ridge on top. It's not flat. It's not like this bassinet here. It's more just literally like a dome structure, like the shape of a head. So it's meant to, like a conical one. It's meant to glance off, or it's meant to catch that ridge there. So this clearly doesn't have that. And you see the bassinet with the kind of the shark fin, as I'm calling it, just because I feel like it. I like sharks. The ridge, it just kind of, even though that part is historical, just kind of feels.
It sounds like you're describing a Sugarloaf helmet.
Yeah, it just feels kind of useless in terms of the actual sport.
For that ridge, or the little, like, how some of them have like a cat visor.
Just the whole make of this helm here in the film.
It's, I think this is because this kind of falls under the kind of Hollywood rule of cool.
Mm-hmm. Hollywood medieval.
Yeah. Man, there's like you said, there's a lot going on with the armor in this. Especially you could see it in William's armor from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. You could see it. There's a fellow in the Ruin tournament, I believe, when William is in the sword match. There is a fellow who has literally got like Gothic plate armor. Let me see if I can get a good. I think I got a good shot of it right here. And you could tell it is Gothic plate armor because it's got these, beautiful, the scalloping lines that Gothic armor has that actually added strength to the armor with reducing the weight of the armor. And it's like, why is this armor here? Let me see here.
As in historical?
Well, as in this time period, because Gothic is basically like the last gasp of plate armor before gunpowder comes in into the scene, and you get this build up to plate armor being really protective and really strong, and then you get gunpowder, and then it's useless, so you lose the arms, you lose the legs. Come on, give me this scene, give me this dude. And he actually has a really beautiful sallet he's wearing with this set. Come on, Mr. Bettany.
I love the thing, though. Like referencing the Last Kingdom. If you look at the costuming from the Last Kingdom, from the Saxons and the Mercians, they're wearing armor that's far later period than what it should be worn in the Last Kingdom. In that series, they're not wearing 9th century clothing. They're wearing clothing that's pretty much 12th century and on, I believe. And then if you look at the Welsh, as they pronounce Wales, it's weird.
Okay, so I found a good shot of this guy, and it's I can't find a good shot of him because a lot of the fight is him just flailing around entirely useless and not being able to do jack.
Yeah, this guy.
Jack squattery. But like the scalloping on the edges on the armor, just not his chest plate, just not on his chest plate, but his pauldrons and on the visor of the sallet and the avital is like, this is. I know it's anachronistic. I know they put all this cool stuff in here. It's just like, why is this here?
Yeah, that's what I always refer to as generic medieval, where Hollywood from films, shows, video games, whatever, they tend to just include everything from all of the medieval period, and then just call it a generic medieval period, where there's no like actual time frame. It's just this looks medieval. Let's put that in there.
This looks medieval. Throw it in there. Although I will say, during this during these sword fighting sequences in the first half of the movie, William has this modified lobster helmet, and that's the helmet he's wearing in this scene during these scenes. And it's a very open-faced sort of helmet. It's just only got like some bars. It looks like what you would imagine a medieval football helmet would end up looking like.
Yeah, I see that here.
And it's actually a neat helmet, and it's a good choice too, especially for the sword fighting stuff where it's like you're just taking hits. You're giving out hits and you're taking hits.
Mm-hmm.
And
now,
it kind of.
Second, you just uploaded that image and bringing back memories. Because I do want to go over King's tournaments, because this takes place in various knightly tournaments, which were a thing. Knights came around the corner from all across wherever to do these tournaments. And this one here, specifically the fight to combat, which we do to some extent, of course. We do a chess match. This one, of course, is a more historical than what we do, at least. They do a basically individual fighting, and then they do a melee. Do they not? I'm trying to remember.
So what there is, I believe what it usually would be is that there would be a joust like this, and then there would be a melee on foot, and that's actually what you see in Game of Thrones a couple of times, I believe. But
at least once
yeah, at
when
least once.
Robert Baratheon is hosting a gathering
Hmm.
and gets involved in the melee.
He wants to
Here,
get in and fight because he wants to fight.
yeah, here I'm trying to remember if they did just individual fights or a melee as well.
More, it was just I believe they only did individual fights, which honestly, I feel like that would have it's like it's a great loss because I would have loved to see more knights. I'm not gonna lie, that's what I like. This is what I like this movie for. There's dudes in armor.
Like I said, with me off the top of my head, stuff is not the best. Was that even? I'm trying to see. Was that even period, or was it literally just the melee, or were there night contests?
Yeah, there were the man on man jousts, but mostly it would have been a bunch of dudes in a
We're
field.
definitely gonna delve deeper into that for its own topic.
It really,
But
yeah.
it just came up in my head because of the pictures reminded me that this pretty much entire film takes place in various tournaments,
Mhm.
and William goes through various different games in order to advance. Because he's at first, his goal is to just become a knight and better his stance, I believe, as a person, and I think to go against his obvious antagonist. But at some point, as with everything in Hollywood, he gets led less by his head and more by something between his legs.
Oh
And
God.
everything is done for a completely and deeply anachronistic female who's literally only supposed to film is to just be half naked and redirect the character.
God, so I was actually just talking about this with someone else, is that, well, this movie, it's a great movie. It's one of those movies you could stick it on in the background of a party and you'll have some people watching it, enjoying it. And you'll have some people be like, oh, this is cool. I'm enjoying this. Then, back to their usual stuff. And it's just, and then you have Jocelyn, who is the lady in question, just absolutely almost out of freaking left field with her style and her hair. And it's like, I don't want to say it's a bad thing because again, this whole thing's anachronistic and all that jazz. But sometimes it's just like,
Sometimes it's a bit too much. Sometimes the anachronism is as close as you're going to get with Hollywood to historical, and sometimes it's Vikings. This was Vikings. Like she was half naked. Sometimes she was showing actual body parts through her fabric, and that's just completely and utterly cack, completely
Yeah.
bollocks.
Yeah, but it's again, this is it. This is the kind of movie that takes that anachronism and it runs with it. It doesn't
Mhm.
try to excuse it. We're here to have a fun time. We're here to have a good time.
Yeah, so we can excuse it because I mean it's satire. So
Yeah.
you go look at a film and be like, is it like Vikings who's claiming to be historical and is literally in no way, shape, or form historical, and it's literally a spit in the face of people who love history, or is it this where it's like, yeah, no, it's nothing about this is historical. Just have fun.
Yeah. Man.
Boop, bop,
So
bop.
another thing I wanted to talk about is that, so in the start of this, the armor that we see on Sir Ector and that William wear, this opening scene, we see Sir Ector, and oh well, he does a little bit of the field, and then after the hit, he dies, and that's the
Yeah.
the start to all of this. And he's like, and we have Watt, Alan Tudyk's character, like, we haven't eaten in 3 days. I'm like, you haven't eaten in 3 days? This guy was not doing good, And it's like, oh, he's a very down in his luck sort of night, and it's like, just man, how bad do you got to be doing as a jousting knight if that's all this guy probably did was go from tournament to tournament? Oh, it just makes me think, just like,
Just a little funny historical sidebar on the fasting end. At certain period, especially medieval pilgrims, not the North American ones, but I mean they would fast for 10 days out of the month, 120 days of the year. So, I mean it's not uncommon for something like that, but perhaps for a knight of. I don't know what the station is for Sir Ector aside from he obviously got knighthood, but I don't. What's his title? As in where her lands, his lands. What's his station? Is he part of a noble family that's like a legit, or is he part of like one of the lower families?
Well, so I gotta imagine off the top of my head. I believe that Sir Ector may have been an English knight, and the thing about English knights is that there was a point that only those who had a family, like who had ancestors who fought in the Battle of Crécy, were allowed to bear arms, in heraldry. So you got to imagine like there was something there, and now he's just, maybe he was. There's a type of knight. Most knights had their holdings in land, but there was also a type of urban knights, which, because there wasn't land to give them, they were given basically the stakes of a town. So they would earn income from a town or a city instead of owning the land and earning income off of that. So it's not really clear because it's not important to the movie, but like he could have just been a landless knight who just really gotten the hard times.
Basically a Knight-Errant.
God, not even. Like,
well, Heath Ledger, William would be a Knight-Errant.
So it's the look. So the thing about William and Roland and Watt is that they're peasant squires, and it's very odd because I didn't believe that, because squires they were usually the sons of other knights come to learn how to be knights and to fights and all that fun stuff. And it's like less a knight, less a squire, more a servant. This is it's a really weird position for them to be in. Right.
Exactly.
Oh man.
So oof. But, one thing I want to go over really quickly, just a kind of another little anachronism, is you noticing on some of these medieval films and series, The Last Kingdom is definitely bad at this, but very specifically, the biggest faux pas I noticed in A Knight's Tale with, I believe, is Paul Bettany's character, and then of course you've got the Black Prince, is they're wearing like motorcycle jackets and incredibly modern coats that are obviously like leather motorcycle coats. I'm like, are you gonna like come in with your sword to slay a Dane or in this case a knight, and you're just gonna ride off in your Harley? Like, what is it? What is it about like motorcycle clothing in medieval periods?
I think it's because the distinction you can draw between a knight on horseback and a dude on a motorcycle, because you could definitely draw like a real close, like you can draw, you can connect the dots there, and God, wouldn't actually be fun is to have a freaking some sort of Mad Max style, group on motorcycles with lances like that. Although you do kind of see something like that used in Fury Road, if you think about it.
Be Odin's Angels.
Oh, okay. So, here's I had that wrong. It was after the Battle of Agincourt. Henry V issued a proclamation in 1419 forbidding those who had not borne arms from assuming arms heraldry. So, because this is, what did I say, the Battle of Poitiers? So this actually would be before then. So this dude could, for all we know, Sir Ector could have just been like, I've got I originally have the cash to have my own coat of arms, and I do.
Right.
So possibly it's a weird. It's a thing to think about. It's one of those you don't really think about it until you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise there'd be usually no chance for a peasant to become a knight.
Yeah. Oh man. So maybe this thinking about it in a different time frame would be like, oh, maybe it's possible. And then at the end of the movie, you have Edward be like, oh well, he's definitely from an old from an old noble family. It's like who's gonna argue with the prince right there?
Right. You get killed.
You don't argue with the prince right there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually one other thing of armor I want to bring up that you actually see a lot near the end is you see a more I believe I can pronounce it right. Morion Helmets. Right. Which is basically the conquistador style helmet you kind of see a lot. Mm-hmm. Although it only got that real big comb and the points closer in the 16th, 17th century. But you see that a lot near the end of the movie, and it's so weird because it's so visually distinct from the other helmets.
Yeah,
it is just like, why is this here?
It's
why did you choose that? What is the choice behind? What is the logic behind this choice?
Mm-hmm. Now you know what might seem anachronistic to the modern viewer, but actually was historically accurate. Is the blacksmith.
Ah,
in one, I love her set, her kit. It's I would say there's anachronisms to it, but for the most part, yeah, the blacksmith. So the blacksmith, like her, could come about because of being a widow. So if a woman became widow and was obviously forcibly without man, without a husband, she could become a blacksmith. And that was historically accurate. So to have her there doing that, assuming to be kind of like switching a gender role, is actually not. It's completely
impossible
with history.
It's something that's completely possible. And actually, in the at a point in the movie, she does mention that she is a widow. Mm-hmm. So it's like, and again, also, she's not just a blacksmith, she's also a farrier, which, to be fair, had a lot more uses than your basic armorer, because all them horses, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I love some, I wish there were, like, I get it, you need to have a romance, because movies need to have a romance. It's Heath Ledger, he's young and hot, but just, so many nights. Give me more nights. Ah! So let's see. It's something else like. Okay. So during, I believe it's the Ruin tournament. This is the first tournament that William, performs in. There is a scene where Jocelyn is introduced to Count Adamar, the sleazy adversary, and God, he could just. The guy who did this, who was it? Because I don't know actors off the top of my head except for a few. And it was Rufus Sewell. But I do not know him. So there's a point where, they're watching, Adamar and Jocelyn are watching from the stands. And for whatever reason, his steward or his squire or whatever, his herald, is just holding a falcon. Throughout this whole scene, he's just got a falcon.
That's another weird thing, because that happens in The Last Kingdom too, with King Ethelred in season 2 or 3. It's almost like half the scenes with Ethelred, he has a falcon next to him. And it's like yes, falconry was a thing. However, why do all of these people just randomly have falcons next to them, and these people are not falconers?
So the scene the scene goes on where Adamar is sitting down next to Jocelyn. He's explaining the point system of the joust, and his herald walks into the scene with this hooded falcon, and he's got the glove. The falcon's got the hood. You can see the lead that's attached to the falcon in the scene, and it's just like, why is this bird here?
I didn't know you were a falconer.
It's just here.
I didn't know you trained and handled falcons and
it's like, was this just here to be like, look, it's a falcon, it's a medieval thing that people did in the medieval times?
And it's one of those things that maybe Hollywood just was like,
we need a falcon, we need a bird stat,
we need that, we aren't going to research it, we're just going to put it in there.
Just, and it's great because during this whole scene where Adamar's being sleazy and like this sleazy kind of flirt, and Jocelyn's just like, yeah, that's cool, bro. I'm watching this. There's just a bird next to Adamar.
Yeah.
There's
Now
just a bird.
I can imagine falcons being gifted, but it seems a little too frequent in these Hollywood medieval tropes.
Like,
One thing I do want to mention in terms of armor, just the final point on the armor, is we see this with Adamar, although the black is a little. Medieval knights painted their armor.
mhm.
They actually, there is evidence for paint on plate mail armor.
Oh
So
yeah,
this idea of medieval knights having nothing but the bare
bare
iron
steel,
armor is
the bare steel.
likely inaccurate.
Oh yeah, no, because you put a coat of paint on it, or if you blacken it through the smithing process, you
Mhm.
protect the steel from rust and other things, which is
And
what you want to do.
and because they cleaned up the armor to put it on display in museums, and of course the paint doesn't always last.
Yeah.
We get the evidence from the rivets, those little creases where it hides, which is how we know that knights painted their armor. It creates this look that we now do as reenactors and living history people.
Hmm.
We have armor exactly like that, where it's like, yep, it's just metal armor. When I would love to see some of us in our group
God,
and other groups of reenactors and living history actually paint their armor.
I want to put a pin in that and just maybe for my armor eventually, because I would love to do that. Just some really
Yeah,
beautiful, because people, and this is actually something I have an issue with this whole movie. It's not bad with it, but these peasants need to be wearing more color. I don't care that peasants, they're
yeah,
dirty and gross. It's like, no, and they only had like 3 or 4 colors. They'd still be wearing colors, yo.
yeah. That's another thing. They tend to distinguish class by color, also class by food. It just it's so weird because peasants. I mean, yeah, they would have to make do with what they had. Make do with what you could get.
Hmm.
However, they would be using natural dyes, and you can get some amazing, rich, deep, vibrant colors and combinations just by going outside and getting some clay.
It's so. I'm sorry. I keep sending the images of this shot with Adamar in this Falcon. Just,
Yeah, and then
just
and then look at Jocelyn's outfit. It's just egregious. She looks like she's absolutely in 2020 in France.
at a show.
Like, look at the crap.
Oh, it's
Also the black clothing. Now, if
there is so much black that is right. It is really weird.
that is so Hollywood medieval that you see a lot of black clothing, a lot of black leather. Which, yes, black was a fabric color that was used. However, I don't think it was as deep a black as what we're seeing here with Adamar.
Hmm.
Because there was black in the Viking Age, but it was more of a grayish black, more of a very light charcoal because
Hmm.
it just yeah. I mean, don't quote me. I'm gonna do a deeper dive research on that for the new series coming up called Hollywood Medieval on the channel. But currently, what my research level has hit is that yes, there was black. Yes, it was used as a fabric dye, but it wasn't as deep a black like onyx. Because dye,
Yeah.
when you dye clothing, with historically accurate means, yes, it can get very vibrant. However, dye tends to fade. Dye
Hmm.
tends to age quickly. It also, once you transfer it over to the fabric, can lighten. So
Hmm.
I'm not sure just how deep you can get the black shade historically. And of course, when I say historically, I am very specifically talking my historical period, which is Viking era. Obviously, you can get a lot better later, but I don't think this Adamar look that we see here is historically accurate.
Hmm.
If you know better, definitely put it in the comments below. I'm still doing research on this for the next series to intermingle with the podcast. But at the moment, it's kind of like
And again, this is another one of those anachronistic things.
Yeah.
So this is about the clothing. Like one more thing I wanted to bring up is at the end, near the end of the movie, we see the characters, their wardrobes get a little better as, of course, William has been winning competitions and earning money, and there is a point where Chaucer is wearing this buff leather jacket with a fur trim, and
Yes.
you get a close look at that fur trim, and you recall our costume directors, like, you don't use fake fur. Don't try not to use fur because you end up using fake fur, and people know it's fake. You look at that fur, it's fake. And this whole jacket itself is just like absolutely hog wild.
I'm gonna be honest though, as it pertains to Hollywood, I would rather they use fake fur.
It's fair.
The only reason, obviously, I do not trust Hollywood studios to source their fur from proper channels. As a reenactor, I try to get all of my real fur. Oh, I love real fur.
Oh,
I understand
so nice.
the faux pas of it, but I try to get it from Native American tribes. I try to get it local. I try to get it from people that are using the entire animal, and I try to get it from people that are not farming these animals specifically for corporate means and for use as a product, so that the
It's just
fur
good
that I'm
business,
getting
Joe.
the fur I'm getting is because right, it's the animal died naturally. It was Native American. Yeah.
Not like anyways, I noticed this, and the thought popped up to me because that's something our costume director always kind of insists on. If you're gonna wear fur, don't get fake fur, because fake fur looks awful, and this is definitely like some weird fake fur thing going on here in this jacket that Chaucer wears at the end
Yeah, no,
of the movie.
he's just wearing a modern motorcycle that Freddie Mercury would wear.
So I think one last thing that we probably should really discuss about the movie, and I think this is the
Mhm.
first thing that people will think about if they know the movie: the music choices.
Ugh.
I get that. So according to an interview with the director, Brian Helgeland, he says that he used modern music in the movie to show modern audiences what people then felt about their music.
Right.
You can use true quote unquote Renaissance music or medieval type of music, but he believes that it fails to convey the kind of the emotional response that they would get from their music. And like, there's parts of it where it's like, why, this is a weird song choice for this.
Like
Like
the entire crowd starts actually singing and playing Queen.
well, as with this movie, as the entire anachronism that it is, it kind of, I like it because it's as a song that we are familiar with today. It feels like it kind of lets you get into the crowd. It's like, it's one of those people have always been people kind of things.
From a story perspective, I actually completely agree with that choice. Not Queen, I just mean the using modern music over it, because obviously we have a disconnect from their music. It just doesn't sound the same to us as, say, me listening to David Bowie or Marilyn Manson, or someone listening to Queen or Nine Inch Nails or Red Hot Chili Peppers and feeling the music and the emotion and the mood that it puts you through. It's hard to make that same connection with classical music or even music that's period to medieval times. So I get that choice. I would agree with it, and I probably would do that too.
And it's just like it's a good reason to do it. And honestly, if anyone ever came at me about this movie, it's like, what the music? It's like, yeah, they use some weird music choices for some of this, but the intro scene, the intro sequence with the crowd, there's people cheering, and there's the group of shirtless drunks, and there's a dude with a turkey leg. It's like, yeah, it's the kind of crowd, it's the vibe you want for people going into this movie.
I feel obviously it's a Renaissance festival atmosphere, but it's kind of the emotion, I think, is what he's trying to convey of what they actually would have had.
Yeah, and you couldn't get that if you had some horn and drum overlay, because that's honestly all the music you could get with that kind of crowd going on, it feels like.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple points where it's like, what is that? The song they use. See if I can get it during this training sequence. It's a weird choice. That's the only song where it's like, this is really weird. I think maybe it's Lowrider. Let me. No, this isn't it. No, it is Lowrider. Okay, it's that. They use Lowrider. Where's that? They. Let me share the link for the training sequence, and it's just a weird choice, honestly, for the sequence. It's just like I feel like it really clashes with it, but they had plans.
They had plans and no planes. My quick question: what are your thoughts on the city, the aesthetic of the city, and the historical
London?
Yeah.
I kind of like it because it is definitely a medieval vibe of London. And oh wait, I've been pinged. Hold on. But it looks like London, honestly. It's like what you would imagine London would have been. Although, fun fact, in the overhead shot, let me see if I can pull it up. There's actually a point where we see like a facsimile of the London Eye, that that huge freaking carousel thingy in modern day London. And
it's in the shot.
It's in the shot, and it's like, why? And it was a model that cost $500,000 or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why? Okay, I guess tournament fair vibes, but it's one of those choices. There's like, why was that choice made? I'm curious.
Yeah, I feel like this entire movie, as I just mentioned, is based entirely off of Renaissance festivals. This is Renaissance Festival, the movie.
I mean, our any festival would be so lucky to have such crowds that are just so into it. Also, did you know that there's a David Bowie song in this movie?
Yeah.
Golden Years. I did not know that. It's just one of those, I don't know music until I actually look it up. So, you know.
Sometimes Bowie gets slipped into things randomly, very subtle. Like there's an episode of Dexter in, I think, season 3. It is season 3, called Going Bimini, where he's on a boat and he's killing some guy who kills his rich wives, and he's got changes and playing over the guy screaming to mask him cutting this guy up. And he's like, I'm going through changes as well. And I'm like, that's such a interesting spot to put Bowie. and an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I mean, that is what all music should aspire to be. It's like, just take my music and slip it in the weirdest places people don't expect.
I'd love to hear what songs do people choose of Bowie when they put them in there. And this one, of course, Golden Years, right? Obviously, it's always in the 70s, but or 80s. But Golden Years, Changes, and Dexter. I think in Buffy they were playing, and don't quote me, but Rupert Giles, the Watcher, was not to misdirect and go into a Bowie podcast here. But Oz, played by Seth Green, was wearing a David Bowie t-shirt in season 4 when he's talking to Willow next to Veruca. And he is in season, I believe, 3 or 4.
Ooh, excuse me.
In Buffy Memory of a Free Festival.
Oh, excuse me.
Giles is playing Memory of a Free Festival. It's such an obscure song to play. So I love seeing what kind of obscure songs they pluck from his discography, because usually it's like Changes or Let's Dance, something like that. A dreadful song he did with Queen. But anywho, let's get back to A Knight's Tale. So
I'd have to take your word for it because I don't know any of those, but I'll take your word for it. So I'm trying to think. The one more thing I wanted to bring up is so in the beginning of in the first part of the movie where they meet Chaucer on the road, and it's funny because he's naked and it's Paul Bettany's butt, and so and this was me thinking about it because this is what we kind of as a festival thing. First of all, that's a weird knife for him to be using as a sidearm that that William pulls on Chaucer. It's like your basic medieval dagger, like your basic B medieval dagger. And let me see if I can pull up. And
yeah, give me an image because it's not coming to my mind, at least off the top of my head. Oh my goodness, there's so much in this movie that we could do like 2 of these on. But I think we'll dissect the actual historical stuff later podcasts, like the tournament and Knight-Errant and stuff like that. But yeah, send me a pic of what you're talking about.
Okay, but so there's this they meet Chaucer, they chat, he talks, he tries to introduce himself, and he's like, "Oh, you're lying, you're just a bunch of dudes." And okay, come on, give me the knife. Give me the knife.
I know what you're talking about.
You remember?
Yeah.
And it keeps pulling me before before and after the scene. I love the shot.
It's like a little dagger. Yeah. Nope, I got a picture of it on Google. There's also replicas.
Why are there replicas of that? That's nothing. What?
Well, I mean, there's replicas of everything.
That's fair. But I love it just because they must have had fun doing this shot, because it's just, as I said, it's a third of the screen is taken up by a naked Paul Bettany. Right,
I'm sure that'll be something to quote unquote Marvel.
But yeah, like the way William is not just wearing, not even just the way he's wearing it, but the knife itself, it just seems really. Is it just me, or does that seem really like weird?
Is that the dagger?
Yes, that is the dagger.
So okay, you just sent the first picture. The way he's wearing it. What do you mean? It's kind of a poor quality.
So let me. There's a better shot of him wearing it, but because he doesn't have a belt, that tunic he's wearing, he's not got it belted.
Right,
it's just the whole. It's just like a whole.
Basically, it's not a tunic at all. It's just a t-shirt.
Yeah, it's.
Which, by the way, we didn't mention this when we were talking about the who's who in this cast. His name.
The guy who played Roland.
Cast. You're probably right, but let me just make sure.
Mark Addy is Roland.
Roland is Robert Baratheon.
Really?
Yep.
Oh man, he looks completely different. Like I would actually honestly see that. It's just it didn't hit until you told it to me.
I mean, he looks slimmer in this film than Robert Baratheon presents.
Yeah.
And obviously he's older in Game of Thrones.
Yeah, because this actually would have it celebrated its 20-year anniversary this year. 20 years of
2001.
Wild. Absolutely wild. Is that just wild to me, or is that
It is. Like Shallow Hal is 20 years old. Like, how are these movies? How are we older than movies?
But yeah, so yeah, that dagger he has, it looks super weird.
It does. It looks like a letter opener.
It really does look like a letter opener, because so I would imagine that
funny historical sidebar. This actually happened. So at some point during the festival that we do, I don't remember which year, but uh, someone gifted me a Sting replica letter opener from,
Is
of
it
course,
your fight
Sting, Lord of the
gift?
Rings. No, no. It
No.
was a unrelated person from the festival.
Oh.
And they were like, "Hey, you could use that on the field, right? It's a dagger." I'm like, "That's a letter opener. I like it. I like Lord of the Rings, but it's a very nice letter opener."
um, like, but and it it is actually a weird thing because you'd think at least William, if not all three of them, would have had a belt with a knife on it because it's just what you had.
Yeah, I mean, they should have at least an inch long or inch wide, I should say, belt around them. But then again, granted, like they're wearing t-shirts. They're wearing modern t-shirts. Nobody in this film is wearing a tunic.
Yeah, that's again, and it's what again. It's like I kept saying is that the clothing kind of keeps, ticking. Like it's weird. It's the anachronism, I guess. It's just
Also, fabric-wise, does it look like they're wearing linen or cotton?
I wouldn't be able to tell you off the top of my head because I don't know fabric that well yet.
Right.
But it also just bothered me. Like they got some really shaggy hems going on there on them sleeves.
Yeah, you notice that in all of these Hollywood productions, the sewing is so bad. Like they try to purposely make the sewing look really terrible, and yet if you look at actual medieval sewing and sewing styles, it's pretty deeply intricate and really, really well done. Like these people did this for a living. Now there's some shoddy examples, right? There's some lower class stuff.
And honestly, it's a real shame because also you got to remember Roland after the Ruin tournament, Roland actually whips up a tunic in the span of a day for William to wear to the feast after the joust. And
that's you could do that.
You could do that, but you got to imagine like the skill it takes to do that. It's just like, boy, you know?
Yeah, I mean, so linen would have been like the undergarments, and then you may have, well, it's 1300s, so I'm not 100% on this time frame, but it should be like a wool over top.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's
weird. Like they're all wearing undergarments.
That's
however, at least they're not wearing leather.
Yeah, the only person that ever seems like really into in the period is William, because a lot of the scenes he's got this white trousers under like some sort of leather chaps hose thing going on, and it looks like like the historical. It should be just a little bit, but it's weird because it looks like he's wearing chaps the whole time.
Yeah, it's so gaudy. Yeah, so the positioning of the dagger, it just looks like it's stuck.
It's like
in him.
It's like this is my gun. Check it out.
It looks like it's sticking in a pocket.
It really does, doesn't it?
Which many funny historical sidebars in this podcast episode, but there might be. I need to do more research, but there might be evidence for a pocket in Viking clothing.
I mean, pockets are all kinds of useful. Mm-hmm. So, anyways, I think we gotta hit a good spot to stop here because I think we ran out of stuff. So, like I said,
we're gonna run out of stuff with A Knight's Tale. However, I definitely want to segment all of that into individual episodes.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot. There's honestly a lot, and I would love to just go piece by piece through the armor and be like, point out that's what that is. This is that kind of armor. This is the time frame for it. Here's why it was successful. Here why it wasn't. But overall, A Knight's Tale. It's a good movie. It's a fun medieval movie that if you've got a crowd that likes medieval stuff, like I would be okay with playing this at a party that consisted of Faircast because it's fun. It's fun medieval stuff. And
Faircast would love this.
It it's a good movie. It's a silly movie. It kind of falls in that category of everyone can if you put this on, everybody can enjoy it.
I can also imagine, at least in reenactment groups like ours, which is actually rather anachronistic, people grabbing these. I am surprised it hasn't been done yet. People making these outfits to wear at fair.
That's
Like
that's a good point. I actually don't think I've ever seen anybody doing a sort of Knight's Tale thing.
We've seen some people do that stupid Superman crap. But we've seen some people kind of do Assassin's Creed-esque thing with Caleb. And give or take, inspired. I've seen him wear
yeah. That's his thing. That's his thing.
I don't remember if he did in fair, though, but I've seen some things that were for Hollywood inspired, but I've never seen anything from A Knight's Tale.
Maybe during seasons around after 2001, maybe for like a year or two or three afterwards, you probably would have seen it more in the fair circuits. But because our time frame is a little more 2010s ish, we probably just maybe missed the boat on it.
Not really. I don't mean to spill tea, because I think our costume designer does an incredible job, and it's actually not her fault. I'm not pinning this on her. I'm just saying our cast in general. We definitely, because I am guilty, completely 100% guilty.
Dragon face.
Noticed, and my suede tabard. I noticed, and our Son of Sandlers. I noticed we have a very deeply anachronistic cast.
We really do, but
we try, but the more I deep dive research, the more I'm like, look at all the crap that I did that's completely wrong. Look at all this stuff that's completely wrong. Look at all that stuff. We really need to work on our costuming.
Yeah, but I think part of the problem with us for doing it for fairs is that it's every individual doing their own costuming.
It is.
So that's why it's just all over the place.
Our costumer does a great job with her resources to sort of launch us on a platform, but then you've got how sometimes in King Arthur year, Return to Avalon, there's 90 people on cast. Sometimes you only have 30 people on cast. If it's 30, it's a lot easier. But 90, oof. And so, I mean, it really, our cast, our show, for anybody else that does reenactism and reenactments and living history from, like, if you're in Edinburgh or anywhere else in the world, we make our own clothing, or we share our clothing. You probably know if you do reenactisms. Reenactisms is a thing. Reenactments. But I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things, like, maybe if with the fair getting its own grounds, maybe it may get better in the future for them. But who knows?
What I'm gonna do now that I'm getting into sewing more, I'll just start making stuff. Just start making like a chest of historically accurate clothing to hand out to people. Be like, here you go, keep it. Hey. So that way, people don't have to spend money on it, and you get something that's actually historically accurate.
That's I think part of the problem is like, you go to Cult of Athena or Medieval Collectibles or any other site that sells medieval style stuff, and it's expensive, dude.
It is, but it's also often not historically accurate.
That too, but it's just just buying something, just buying the parts, buying the pieces piece by piece. It's expensive.
Here's an easy, really, really simple clothing fabric tip for all reenactors and living history buffs and anybody in Hollywood. Linen undergarments. Linen are your undergarments. I don't know at what point they started becoming not your undergarments. And I don't know if when it's okay in terms of class, that based on what you're able to access, under your linen is pretty much all you're going to wear. But linen undergarments is common, and basically everything else is wool or silk. Silk, of course, is, but wool was the #1 trade in medieval history. especially in Viking era and onward, because that was the most common, and it's cold.
Yeah.
It's cold. So
cold out there.
Wool, 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 wool. Wool.
All right. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. We've got actually, I feel like we covered a lot, and I'm happy about that.
We covered, I think, 1/3 of the film that we could cover, but the other 2/3 we're gonna do individually.
Honestly, we could go through and follow the film scene by scene.
But that's more of a cinematography kind of storytelling.
Yeah, and we can dissect it scene by scene and bits, but it's I feel like we covered a lot of bits about it that are the important bits, like the music choices and some of the armor choices and the story choices, and so I don't want to have to go. It's a 2-hour movie, man.
Oof.
It's a 2-hour movie, man.
Hey, you know what? That's still less than what movies are today.
And there's parts where it's like, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to talk about this stupid romance bit. No, thank you.
Yeah. This 2021 female character that just gets put in this movie simply because she's a female. That's her only purpose.
God, that honestly, I don't want to start on that. It'll just make me feel bad.
We'll go. Maybe we'll do a Patreon episode podcast. Doing a full rundown of A Knight's Tale specifically for our patrons.
That'd be cool. I'd be okay with that.
Indeed. Until then, of course, all episodes are uploaded to Patreon literally after I edit them. So this will be up on Patreon tomorrow being August 16th. And this will air in September on YouTube.
Great.
So if you want to catch all of the episodes early, literally sometimes a month and a half out, subscribe to our Patreon. It's just $5 or $10. Depending on the $10 patrons get to vote on things that we do, content. We'll also do tutorial videos up for our patrons that do the $10 one. $5 ones get all the exclusive access already anyway, and Discord. So just to put that little plug in there, I've finally activated the Patreon.
Hooray!
So I need to remember to actually mention it because it is
support us do more stuff. Thumbs up.
And of course, we also put historical documents, research papers, and all that stuff in our Discord. So try to make this a nice little one-stop shop community, and hope to see more people there that aren't just our reenactment group. But until then, I am NC, of course, here with the Talk Past podcast, my incredible co-host.
It's me, your friendly squire and gopher, Red Iron Riot, aka the War Queen. Buddy, it's been a pleasure doing this again. This is one of my favorite movies, honestly, and I'm glad to talk about it.
Exactly. And bippity bop.
Whoop.